Legend of Total War here, and today we're doing another top 5 Total War video. This time I'm covering the top 5 original soundtracks in a Total War game. Now music's very subjective, so I don't expect everyone to agree with my top 5 list here. Now the main thing that I'm critiquing these soundtracks on is basically how I feel when I listen to them, and the energy that I think that these soundtracks emanate and provide to the actual game experience. Anyway, with that being said, let's move on to the number 5 pick. Coming in at number 5 is Total War Shogun 2's soundtrack. So this was composed by Jeff Van Dyke, and what I like about the Total War Shogun 2 soundtrack is the immersion that I get when I listen to it. I do actually feel like I'm in Japan, I guess, when the game's playing. It doesn't feel like it's overly westernized. Now this is coming from a Western perspective, but another reason that I like it is because of the high energy, especially of the battle music. Now the battles in Shogun 2 are particularly fast-paced, and so having slow-paced music during battles doesn't make sense. Battles can be over in a matter of minutes in Shogun 2. So I think that Jeff Van Dyke did an excellent job in portraying the pacing of the battles, but also of the setting of Japan. So that's why it gets my number 5 pick. Let's move on to number 4. Coming in at number 4 is actually for Napoleon Total War. So, Napoleon Total War soundtrack was composed by Richard Beddow, and even though I don't personally enjoy Napoleon Total War that much as a game, I do actually think it has one of the best soundtracks in the Total War franchise. Now, the battles in Napoleon Total War are much slower paced than, for example, Shogun 2. Battles can last anywhere from an hour to half an hour, whatever. It just depends on how many troops are on the battlefield sometimes. But the reason that I like the original soundtrack is because of the cinematic feel to it. To me, the quality of the soundtrack could easily have been that of a you know, a Hollywood movie. Sometimes it actually feels like, you know, even these quite long, drawn out battles sometimes, that it is actually very cinematic, and that's the main reason why I think that the Napoleon soundtrack is one of the best. Anyway, let's move on now to number 3. Coming in at number 3 is the soundtrack for Rome Total War, the original, which was composed by Jeff Van Dyke. Now, I don't think that the Rome Total War soundtrack is overly immersive to the time period. It doesn't make me feel that much that we're in ancient Rome. But one thing that the Rome Total War soundtrack definitely has in abundance is a lot of energy. Now, a lot of the music does feel a lot or more synthesized than opposed to orchestral, like with the Napoleon example. Napoleon Total War's soundtrack feels incredibly orchestral, whereas this is a lot more synthesized, which personally I would prefer it to be more orchestral, but you know, it's an older game. But that being said, the energy and the pace of the music throughout this game is very much reflective of the incredibly fast-paced battles that occur in Rome Total War. Battles can be over in a matter of seconds sometimes, and the music kind of really gets the blood going, I feel, and that's why it gets the number 3 slot. Anyway, let's move on to number 2. Coming in at number 2 is the soundtrack for Total War Warhammer 2. Now, this one's a little bit divisive because I know a lot of people aren't that fond of Warhammer 2. Don't get me wrong, Warhammer 2 is probably the most popular Total War game right now, but it is a bit divisive within the community, split amongst fantasy fans and historical fans. Now, as for the music, I think it's one of the best soundtracks in the Total War franchise. I mean, I wouldn't have given it the number 2 slot if I didn't think so. It was composed by Richard Beddow, and I think it's some of his best work. Now, part of the reason why I think it's so good is largely due to the incredibly high energy of each of the soundtracks, especially during the battle music, but also due to the immersion. Listening to this particular soundtrack right here, if you listen to it even without the battle, you would get a feeling of Skaven to it. This is the Skaven soundtrack. I believe it's called Plague Time's Over. And this is just one example of immersive music that's played throughout this game. And because there's so many different races and each of them seems to have their own, you know, theme music, I think that Richard Beddow did an absolutely amazing job on the soundtrack of Total War Warhammer 2, and I'm looking forward to see what he can do with Warhammer 3. It may even top the list. Anyway, let's move on now to the number 1 pick for the best soundtrack in a Total War game. Coming in at number 1, it's gotta be Medieval 2. So, as everyone, well, a lot of people know, Medieval 2 is my favorite game, but I think one of the reasons why I love Medieval 2 so much is actually the soundtrack. not only is it incredibly high energy, it feels a lot more orchestral than Rome Total Wars, which is its predecessor. But it feels immersive for the time period, and like I said, it's incredibly high energy. Now, this particular track that's being played right now throughout this battle is War of Kings, and this is one of my favorite pieces of gaming music of all time. Now, this has got a real soft spot for me because I can actually remember instances of this music playing in particular battles, and I remember a specific example when I first heard this particular track. I was playing the Britannia campaign for the first time, and I was in a battle playing as England, and I was losing the battle. It was a tough battle. I was outpowered by, I think it was Scotland, and I wasn't doing so well. And then this music came on, and I felt inspired by the high energy and just the immersion of the actual music. And right as the crescendo was building, or whatever it is, I don't know music terms, I turned the battle around with some timely charges, killed the enemy general, and turned the entire battle around. And a large part of what I think inspired me to do that was actually this soundtrack. And I believe that if a soundtrack can actually inspire the player to actually do better in the actual game, then you've really got a masterpiece there. And it's not just this particular track. There is a number of tracks throughout the Medieval 2 soundtrack that have that same effect. It's just that, in my opinion, War of Kings has the best. There are plenty other examples I can give of amazing soundtracks, especially on the battle map. Soundtracks of from Medieval 2. There's the Crusader one. There's the Duke of Death. I'm sure a lot of people would have maybe even preferred Duke of Death over War of Kings, but my personal favorite is actually War of Kings. So anyway, that's my top 5 pick. Let me know what you think, and also let me know what you want me to do in the next top 5 video. Anyway, I'll see you next time, fuckers.